Okay, let's go. So I did have an idea. So this text block, there is no auto wrap. In fact, there's none of this either. Okay. So now this is gonna look ugly. But we go to upgrade hat thing. This text block is gonna be center aligned. Then upgrade hat thing. This whole box is 181 in width. So it'll be 3 times 181. So we'll take the scroll box, take this width, subtract it. Now that's 341. That's got to be in the space. It's going to be divided into 4 sections. It's going to be 85.35, basically. And then we don't need this one, I don't think. Okay. The other thing is, you're going to set all of your font sizes, regardless of how big it is, to that, 12. Maybe it can be a bit bigger than 12. I don't know, how's 20? No, 16. That does start to bleed together. Also, I forgot. I added one more thing that I didn't initially have. It is getting hot. Let's go. Also, important objects. Save data fix. I need to do a blue called hat value. Alright. think this is all good for now. Let me check. 16 bled into each other, so it needs to be smaller than 16, but still bigger than 12. No, not 1. 14. Let's try that. Yeah. I think that works. Is there a way to do, like... Oh, it's F11, isn't it? Yeah, that looks really good. You can even make out some of the kanji. Alright. Next we're gonna do... I'm gonna copy this, but instead of names, it's gonna be... descriptions. Is there a way I can have a text file?
Everybody wants a chance to be a hero. Everybody wants a chance to save the day. Won't you come along and baby be a hero? 'Cause it feels alright, yeah, it feels okay. Hey, Scooby, come on, Scooby. Oh, Scooby.
Let's go to downloads. New text document, call it something like item names and put in shop at Annex. They'll leave and let me do it. Item names. So I don't know, 1, 0. Okay. Let's do something like 0. So then go to upgrade hat thing and I'll do something like what was this called? How to use a string table? Text. I don't. No, you're still not giving me what I want. Make literal text, maybe? I don't know. I don't know what we're doing here. Yeah, it should be get item names. But I don't know. I don't know how to... How? Yeah, that's not what I'm wanting. Find text in localization table. Find texts in localization table. So it should be something like item names. And then I can put in the key 0. Let's see. Can I get the right thing, please? Now, if this says 0, then I'm going to be very upset. Okay. Does not say 0. Good. But, oh no, item names. Now, if this says 0, I'm going to be upset. Nope. Source string. Okay, so the key can just be 0 then, right? Happy. Tips to create a text instance from a string table ID and key. There we go. Table ID advanced. I think this is your ID, but I could be wrong. Or no, it'd be happy now. Missing string table entry. HAPPY. Where to find the namespace? It's your string table at the top. It's not the name of the string table. HAPPY. That's what I got, so you should be, but it's not. So why is it not? Make literal text. Well, that's probably going to be a problem, considering I want the opposite of what this is showing me. Unreal Engine. I have a string table. How do I get values from said string table? This is returning missing string table value. And I have confirmed that this is returning. I've confirmed that string table has a thing with that. Content bullet points. Well, that's going to be a problem when that doesn't exist either. Ironically, does text exist in string table? Does not exist. editor only equals false. Details panel uncheck. And place the details panel. Neither does the details. Also, this is what I got in the make texture. I don't know if you're blind, but the namespace and the asset name make text from string table. Well, make text from string angle normal doesn't exist. Find text in string table. Okay, maybe that'll work. That's live table. All blueprint string table functions. That's literally what I did. Also, I'm out of images to upload. It's in. Well, one is going to be a problem when make literal string does not exist. Also, you're just hallucinating now. There is no... Also, you're just hallucinating right now. There is no table ID field. If it works, I will be happy. But as of right now, I am not. Missing string table entry unreal. Oh wait, can I add new categories? When did I click you? Close Excel. Hope he likes you. I don't know, was something item table or something? Item table. What do I need this for? Item stuff. I have no idea what I'm looking at. Node. How do I make a node? Let's see, what was it? Data table. Pick row structure. You're a structure. Are you even used by anything? I don't think you are. Oh, you're used by one thing. I'll call it something like item things. Alright, first variable, we got a string called the name. Then, string called description. And then, you get an image. Yeah, what do you, yeah, an image, picture. And then add variable called cost. Is there anything else? We got the cost. that. And then this is whatever's going to be transferred from that to that. So we got you guys. I think that's everything. So let's go. Miscellaneous. Data table. Item information. So I have one that's like sourceful marking. Use less ammo when firing special weapons. Don't know how much it'll cost me. So now we go and do the item table. No. There's a data table. Alright, we'll do row name. What does it mean by that? Can we not get it by the name and instead get it by your... data table? I don't know. Alright, here we go. And then we'll save the description. Also the text. But your property is not named, it is description. Save data 6. No. AG shop. We actually don't need you anymore. I just needed that value. Alright, you don't need costs, and you don't need names. Cost. No. Cost. If the cost is equal to that. First of all, if that index is already owned, it's not anymore. Then you get the currency. Currency, if you subtract the cost, gives you a new currency. There we go. And now we can get rid of costs, names, and displays. And now we'll make new cost. Store it in there. Get data table. Oh. No. Wait. No. Nope, not there. Okay. Get data table. Row names. I see. Here we go. So we'll get item information. The row names will get a copy. The one at index. It'll be your index. Put that in there, and then the row is found, of course, which is probably ready. Because I'll spend time adding it now. We plug the cost, turn it to that, and then we'll also save the cost in here. Image. Set image. Oh, what do we do with that? We say, yeah. What do we do with this? We set something. Texture. Oh, so you're not a that, you're a texture. Let's do the AFE loader. Just for now. Texture 2D object, okay. So you are a texture 2D. Oh! Sorry about that. Extra 2D. Still the AFE logo. Okay. No need for this anymore. So that's the cost, gets set to cost. The name gets set to name. And the description gets set to the description, which we don't get to see the description until you're hovered, but we do get to do this. So I'm gonna go to shop then. And we're gonna say print string broke owned print string broke print string buy. Then we're also gonna have a thing custom event. Some like change. We'll have the current coins and a text box in the canvas panel. This variable. And we'll say get set text to join concatenate. What do we do? Okay. Layers. BP. What's the name of layer? Save game. Doing this, and then currency. Change So now I'll go to title screen. Restart the game. So I'll do item information like 100. I had a thing here. Expert. you hats. Get in. And then, side of you, I'll have 3 buttons. Yeah. It's just E2. That's interesting. Dial. Normal. When it's hovered, it'd be FF. Actually, what's the difference? E2 and FF are, let's see, F plus F minus 2, so that'd be D plus F, 15 plus 13, 28, divide that by 2, you get 14, add 14 to E2, 14, 15, 16, so we have 1. Something broke. Nope. Wrong one. Need to go to this title screen. So it'll be hidden and not his testable cell phone. Just in case, save. Save visibility. Okay. outline exists. Whatever. Outline settings. Crest. He also was added text item to it. You're supposed to make that button.
On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Away, away, away.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. All the stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in the hope that Saint Nicholas soon would be there. Then what to my wondering I should appear, a miniature sleigh and a tiny reindeer, a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. Saint Nick, Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his reindeer all came, as he shouted on Dasher and each reindeer's name.
On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Away,
Look, here comes Rudolph! And so up to the
Text on
housetop the
button
reindeer soon
is
flew, with the sleigh
black.
full of toys and Saint
Nail.
Nicholas too. Down the chimney he came with a leap and a bound. He was dressed all in fur and his tummy was round. He spoke not a word but went straight to his work and filled
Well,
all
there's
the
a kind of a
stockings
problem
with
where you're not
turnips
having the
here.
same problem
And
I'm having.
laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose.
there he goes, there he goes.
But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and
You're-
to all
Why
a
are
good
you
night.
black? Why are you black? It doesn't make any sense.
And giving a nod up the chimney he rose.
Also, you're supposed to change your color when I do this, right? That's the normal color. Why are you not black? No, why are you black?
Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet,
Merry
on
Christmas!
Cupid, on Donner.
Yeah, what happened here? I changed. So your color and opacity, got it. Oh, I see. Background color should be pure white. There we go. Now I go in here, and you're wrong. But can I? Background color. 0000000 E2. Items. Hair. Items, hats, put them on rocket. I don't know, wardrobe or something. So whenever you're clicked, now that I think about it, we don't need that 1 second thing. You can just go straight into it. Hi. Now when you're clicked, and when you're clicked, there we go. Then we'll do it's items. You can just do a for loop. Body is going to be doing this. It's not going to be grid panel 83. It's going to be the hat one, which is grid panel. There you go. body. Da-da. Well, actually, maybe one body. It's this. The next thing is going to be index plus. Max that one got is 29, so this will be 30. So 0 and 1. And then you'll do a full loop. This will be save game. Get item. No, what did you call it? Get owned upgrades. There we go. Link. Actually, this will just be a for each. No, what did we? For each. And go if this is the case. Then. Items. Actually. Yeah. I'm gonna go restock. Okay, I'll have to actually make this. No, custom. What? Restock inventory. So restock inventory, we will go for each of the things. Well, first we'll set this to 0 for each of the things we have. If it is the case, then we will. What will we do? Edit. Oh no. This will be the grid panel inside owned items, grid panel underscore 1. Items yet, we'll go here. I'll do plus plus. Urban hint. Yep. So we'll also restock over here. Oh yeah, the index will be here. Alright. Alright, this isn't important to its startup thing, so we don't have to put anything in there yet. Actually, hold on. Wait a second. Wardrobe. We got all that. What do I go down here and buy you? Okay, so it adds unique. That's good. Okay. Now you'll have a boolean called something like buy or own. That's false, but also search buy or own. True. And when you are clicked, if by your own, you will do that. Otherwise, we'll have to do something else. Give me a minute. Okay. Equip items. That's a good point. Set up the there you go. To make a custom event called something like equip need an index. There you go. As of right now, this doesn't do it. Alright. Well, I am gonna tell people that it doesn't look good. Game. Let's make a canvas panel. On this canvas panel are 4 buttons.
If you want to hear a story about that preacher and the bear, gather round, boys. I don't want you to miss none of this here story, cause it goes like this. A preacher who went out to hunt. It was on one Sunday morning. Though he was one Christian young man, but he took his gun along. Well, the first thing he shot was a bunch of fine quails, and he shot him a nice fat hare. Then through the woods on his way back home, he met a great big grizzly bear. Then the Reverend fell down upon his knees. He sent up a great long prayer. Whilst he cast one eye to the heaven on high, but kept the other eye on the bear. He said, the Lord delivered Daniel from the lion den, Jonah from the belly of the whale. The 3 Hebrew boys from the fiery furnace said, a good book do declare. Now look here, Lord, if you don't help me, don't you go to helping that bear. He needed that all the time, Johnny needed that all the time, he needed that all the time, John brother, is it good enough for me? My Lord, that all the time, John brother, that all the time, why don't you give me that all the time, John brother, is it good enough for me? Yes, then the bear walked out in the middle of the road, up to the Reverend walks he. That Reverend laid his religion down, he climbed up a tall pine tree. Yes, he climbed way up to the top of that tree and climbed out on a limb, whilst the bear sits down so endlessly and licked his mouth at him. Around about 3 o'clock, the old limb broke. Reverend came tumbling down. Boy, he grabbed his knife, he cut the bear 10 times before he struck the ground. He needed some all the time, Johnny needed some all the time, he needed some all the time, John brother, is it good enough for me? My Lord, that all the time, John brother, that all the time, why don't you give me that all the time, John brother, is it good enough for me? Yes, then the bear reached out to give the Reverend a hug like you would hug a long-lost friend. But old Reverend put on that disappearing act, he went splitting through.
You are hidden.
Old Reverend went to running like an old hound dog, trying to overtake a hare. He went home, went to bed, and took 6 naps before his shadow got there. He had that all the time, Johnny had that all the
Self
time.
only.
He had that all the time, Johnny brother, is it good enough for me? My Lord, that all the time, Johnny brother, that all the time. Why don't you give me that all the time, Johnny brother, is it good enough for me?
Oh.
See, brother, the preacher made a touchdown.
Yeah, there we go. There you go. Looks like we go forward. Okay, all 4 of you are here, but that's good. What buttons are you? You're button 2, 4, 5, and 3. 2, 4, 5, 3. That's their order. No, it's upgrades. Zero. Alright, we do that, and we get you the item. Reverse, and then all we need is the image. Now we'll do this. But I can't. Unless I did it as a child thing, but I'm not gonna do that. Copy 0. Actually, we don't even need button 2. It's image 153, image 1, image 2, image. It's image 2, then 1, then 0, right? 1, then 2, then 0. Most importantly, actually B, So if it's false, it goes there. If it's false, it goes there. If it's false, it goes there. If it's true, it'll go there. There. True, it'll go there. False or true, you go there. False or true, you go there. Alright, so if it's all -1, let's just plug in our own save game so we don't have to worry about all that. Alright, let's still do. Restock, equip items. Restock, equipped items. So yeah, let's pull this away. You're all over here. Make sure that we get the index at the proper whatever the upgrade is at. That's why we have to test it. Alright, and then each of you guys needs an on-click event. Selected slot. So we'll say save game, get save game, get upgrade, set upgrades, set index, no, set array element, there we go. At this index, we will set it. No. Set it at the selected slot to this item. And then we will have to save the game. Save one. Restock. equip items. So you shouldn't be saying that if equip item. You're going for equip items if it's wait. Fire owned is true. So you guys should be owned by Wardrobe. You're 3. Which will actually be 2. You should be 2. You're the second one. I'm guessing this is image 2, but I'll go double check. Image 2 is okay. Okay. Oh. Wait, what? So, I'm assuming what happens is you re-equip. Yeah, you should do that whenever you restock the inventory, which you do, right? Yeah, restock inventory. Tutorial. Get 1,000 items, so I have a second thing. Alright, there we go. Now I go to shop. Buy the extras. There we go. Okay. You know what? Actually, yeah. Can't be center line. We need something like owned. So then we'll delay for about a second and say, if you are owned. So actually, yeah, when we make the inventory, I want to check, save game, good save game. Kids owned upgrades. Kids, get a copy. If you are owned, you don't do anything. If you're not, do that. So there we go. Then we'll just simply tell the one at that index actually just do the function. Call it something like has the index and the cost. Index. So if the cost is greater than the current, we will do that, do that. Do it at this index. Index goes into three things. The get, cost goes into two things. There we go. And then, in return, we this will return true. This will return false. This will return false. String already. By item, change that to by func. Just index. Do I own the entire thing? I don't own the entire thing. What's going on here? There we go. Okay. You know what? Title screen. Start game. Hard. And then I can just change some stuff. Change your costume pen. Yeah. You guys should see. Hey, why is there padding? Nope. Padding was fine. It's just... yeah. Change it to left and right. Why is there... yeah, why is that weird? Alright, here's what I'm gonna do. In the graph. When an item is restocked, if it's not that, then we're going to just simply CP. There we go. And of course this means that I'm going to drag everything out of it. Both of you and the other important thing is quit item. before I do this, we're gonna say for each, this will actually be completed for each of the set upgrade. I'm saying if the elements is equal to you, then set array elements of u at this index to -1. Alright. Now we start with nothing. Alright, something weird's happening. Could be. Very likely. Could be your first block. Yep. You guys are all white. Also, first things first, we're gonna ask, does this even do that? And we're gonna say, does the upgrades at get copy of the current selected slot equal or not equal this? If it does not, then you'll do that. Whatever. Does we'll go ahead and set this array element at this index to -1. So we're going to select you. That doesn't seem to work. So, okay. No, because that is working, so it's not working. Let's change it around. So if the set upgrade at this slot is equal to the index that I'm trying to set you to, I do want you to turn into -1, and then you will restock equipped item slots. Problem is here. There we go. Because I was thinking, like, what if people don't like any of the options and they want to turn them all off? Okay, right. This is not working how I wanted it to. Items yet needs to be set to 0. And then instead of index, it will be items yet at these 2 things. And we will ++ items yet. We will also do the same thing with you guys. Set items yet to false. Not false, set it to 0. Do this, say this will only happen if this at that index is false is plus plus x. There we go. All right. Also, there we go, big hat thing. If it's going to be a flip item, we also need another thing. If, let's see, it's going to be 29, it's going to be 30 or more. Index thing is less than 30. Then you'll do that. Otherwise, let's go to shop. Event. With value. We simply say if save game hat value is equal to, and we will set hat value to 0. Otherwise, we will set hat value to this index. Set hat. Set hat. No. Set hat. There's a hat. Equip hat. With the index thing plugged in. Alright, and now we got that.
Come in. Well, 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 look who's here. I haven't seen you in many a year. If I knew you were coming, I'd bake the cake. Bake the cake. Bake the cake. If I knew you were coming, I'd bake the cake. How'd you do? How'd you do? How'd you do? Had you dropped me a letter, I'd have
All right.
grandest band in the land. Had you dropped me a letter,
Time
I'd
to do some stuff.
and spread the welcome mat for you. Oh, I don't know where you came from.
Once I finish using the bathroom,
but it really doesn't matter. Grab a chair and fill your platter and dig, dig, dig right in.
wait.
If I knew you were coming,
See you in a minute.
Cake.
use the bathroom and stuff, and then I will start working on the art. The art that is not intended to look good, by the way.
Grab a chair and fill your platter and dig, dig, dig right in. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake, hired a band. Goodness sake, if I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? How'd you do?
So another thing I think, is since I'm going to be doing a lot of art, I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the music and turn on Lord of the Rings. Oh, wait, there we go. Ooh.
Yes, the ring, said Mary. My dear old hobbit, you don't allow for the inquisitiveness of friends. I have known about the existence of the ring for years, before Bilbo went away, in fact, but since he obviously regarded it as secret, I kept the knowledge in my head, until we formed our conspiracy. I did not know Bilbo, of course, as well as I know you. I was too young, and he was also more careful, but he was not careful enough. If you want to know how I first found out, I will tell you. Go on, said Frodo faintly. It was the Sackville Bagginses that were his downfall, as you might expect. One day, a year before the party, I happened to be walking along the road, when I saw Bilbo ahead. Suddenly in the distance the SB.S appeared, coming towards us. Bilbo slowed down, and then hey presto! He vanished. I was so startled that I hardly had the wits to hide myself in a more ordinary fashion, but I got through the hedge and walked along the field inside. I was peeping through into the road, after the SB.S had passed, and was looking straight at Bilbo when he suddenly reappeared. I caught a glint of gold as he put something back in his trouser pocket. After that I kept my eyes open. In fact, I confess that I spied. But you must admit that it was very intriguing, and I was only in my teens. I must be the only one in the Shire, besides you Frodo, that has ever seen the old fellow's secret book. You have read his book, cried Frodo. Good heavens above! Is nothing safe? Not too safe, I should say, said Mary. But I have only had one rapid glance, and that was difficult to get. He never left the book about. I wonder what became of it. I should like another look. Have you got it, Frodo? No. It was not at Bag End. He must have taken it away. Well, as I was saying, Mary proceeded, I kept my knowledge to myself, till this spring when things got serious. Then we formed our conspiracy, and as we were serious, too, and meant business, we have not been too scrupulous. You are not a very easy nut to crack, and Gandalf is worse. But if you want to be introduced to our chief investigator, I can produce him. Where is he? Said Frodo, looking round, as if he expected a masked and sinister figure to come out of a cupboard. Step forward, Sam, said Mary, and Sam stood up with a face scarlet up to the ears. Here's our collector of information. And he collected a lot, I can tell you, before he was finally caught. After which, I may say, he seemed to regard himself as on parole, and dried up. Sam, cried Frodo, feeling that amazement could go no further, and quite unable to decide whether he felt angry, amused, relieved, or merely foolish. Yes, sir, said Sam. Begging your pardon, sir. But I meant no wrong to you, Mr. Frodo, nor to Mr. Gandalf for that matter. He has some sense, mind you, and when you said go alone, he said no. Take someone as you can trust. But it does not seem that I can trust anyone, said Frodo. Sam looked at him unhappily. It all depends on what you want, put in Mary. You can trust us to stick to you through thick and thin, to the bitter end. And you can trust us to keep any secret of yours, closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone, and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. Anyway, there it is. We know most of what Gandalf has told you. We know a good deal about the ring. We are horribly afraid, but we are coming with you, or following you like hounds. And after all, sir, added Sam, you did ought to take the elves' advice. Gilder said you should take them as was willing, and you can't deny it. I don't deny it, said Frodo, looking at Sam, who was now grinning. "I don't deny it, but I'll never believe you are sleeping again, whether you snore or not. I shall kick you hard to make sure. You are a set of deceitful scoundrels," he said, turning to the others. "But bless you," he laughed, getting up and waving his arms, "I give in. I will take Gilder's advice. If the danger were not so dark, I should dance for joy. Even so, I cannot help feeling happy, happier than I have felt for a long time. I had dreaded this evening. Good. That's settled." 3 cheers for Captain Frodo and company, they shouted, and they danced round him. Merry and Pippin began a song, which they had apparently got ready for the occasion. It was made on the model of the dwarf song that started Bilbo on his adventure long ago, and went to the same tune. "Farewell we call to hearth and hall. Though wind may blow and rain may fall, we must away ere break of day. Far over wood and mountain tall, to Rivendell, where elves yet dwell. In glades beneath the misty fell, through moor and waste we ride in haste. And whither then we cannot tell. With foes ahead, behind us dread. Beneath the sky shall be our bed, until at last our toil be past. Our journey done, our errand sped. We must away. We must away. We ride before the break of day." "Very good," said Frodo. "But in that case there are a lot of things to do before we go to bed, under a roof, for tonight at any rate." "Oh. That was poetry," said Pippin. "Do you really mean to start before the break of day?" "I don't know," answered Frodo. "I fear those Black Riders, and I am sure it is unsafe to stay in one place long, especially in a place to which it is known I was going. Also Gilder advised me not to wait. But I should very much like to see Gandalf." I could see that even Gilder was disturbed when he heard that Gandalf had never appeared. "It really depends on 2 things. How soon could the riders get to Bucklebury? And how soon could we get off? It will take a good deal of preparation." "The answer to the second question," said Merry, "is that we could get off in an hour. I have prepared practically everything. There are 6 ponies in a stable across the fields, stores and tackle are all packed, except for a few extra clothes, and the perishable food." "It seems to have been a very efficient conspiracy," said Frodo. "But what about the Black Riders? Would it be safe to wait 1 day for Gandalf?" "That all depends on what you think the riders would do, if they found you here," answered Merry. "They could have reached here by now, of course, if they were not stopped at the North Gate, where the hedge runs down to the river bank, just this side of the bridge. The gate guards would not let them through by night, though they might break through. Even in the daylight they would try to keep them out, I think, at any rate until they got a message through to the master of the hall, for they would not like the look of the riders, and would certainly be frightened by them. But, of course, Buckland cannot resist a determined attack for long. And it is possible that in the morning even a Black Rider that rode up and asked for Mr. Baggins would be let through. It is pretty generally known that you are coming back to live at Crick Hollow." Frodo sat for a while in thought. "I have made up my mind," he said finally. "I am starting tomorrow, as soon as it is light. But I am not going by road, it would be safer to wait here than that. If I go through the North Gate my departure from Buckland will be known at once, instead of being secret for several days at least, as it might be. And what is more, the bridge and the east road near the borders will certainly be watched, whether any rider gets into Buckland or not. We don't know how many there are, but there are at least 2, and possibly more. The only thing to do is to go off in a quite unexpected direction." "But that can only mean going into the Old Forest," said Fredgar horrified. "You can't be thinking of doing that. It is quite as dangerous as Black Riders." "Not quite," said Merry. "It sounds very desperate, but I believe Frodo is right. It is the only way of getting off without being followed at once. With luck we might gel a considerable start." But you won't have any luck in the Old Forest, objected Fredger. No one ever has luck in there. You'll get lost. People don't go in there. Oh yes they do, said Mary. The Brandybucks go in, occasionally when the fit takes them. We have a private entrance. Frodo went in once, long ago. I have been in several times, usually in daylight, of course, when the trees are sleepy and fairly quiet. Well, do as you think best, said Fredger. I am more afraid of the Old Forest than of anything I know about, the stories about it are a nightmare, but my vote hardly counts, as I am not going on the journey. Still, I am very glad someone is stopping behind, who can tell Gandalf what you have done, when he turns up, as I am sure he will before long. Fond as he was of Frodo, Fatty Bolger had no desire to leave the Shire, nor to see what lay outside it. His family came from the East Farthing, from Budgeford in Bridgefields in fact, but he had never been over the Brandywine Bridge. His task, according to the original plans of the conspirators, was to stay behind and deal with inquisitive folk, and to keep up as long as possible the pretense that Mr. Baggins was still living at Crick Hollow. He had even brought along some old clothes of Frodo's to help him in playing the part. They little thought how dangerous that part might prove. Excellent, said Frodo, when he understood the plan. We could not have left any message behind for Gandalf otherwise. I don't know whether these riders can read or not, of course, but I should not have dared to risk a written message, in case they got in and searched the house. But if Fatty is willing to hold the fort, and I can be sure of Gandalf knowing the way we have gone, that decides me. I am going into the Old Forest first thing tomorrow. Well, that's that, said Pippin. On the whole I would rather have our job than Fatty's, waiting here till Black Riders come. You wait till you are well inside the forest, said Fredger. You'll wish you were back here with me before this time tomorrow. It's no good arguing about it any more, said Mary. We have still got to tidy up and put the finishing touches to the packing, before we get to bed. I shall call you all before the break of day. When at last he had got to bed, Frodo could not sleep for some time. His legs ached. He was glad that he was riding in the morning. Eventually he fell into a vague dream, in which he seemed to be looking out of a high window over a dark sea of tangled trees. Down below among the roots there was the sound of creatures crawling and snuffling. He felt sure they would smell him out sooner or later. Then he heard a noise in the distance. At first he thought it was a great wind coming over the leaves of the forest. Then he knew that it was not leaves, but the sound of the sea far off, a sound he had never heard in waking life, though it had often troubled his dreams. Suddenly he found he was out in the open. There were no trees after all. He was on a dark heath, and there was a strange salt smell in the air. Looking up he saw before him a tall white tower, standing alone on a high ridge. A great desire came over him to climb the tower and see the sea. He started to struggle up the ridge towards the tower, but suddenly a light came in the sky, and there was a noise of thunder. Chapter 6. The Old Forest. Frodo woke suddenly. It was still dark in the room. Mary was standing there with a candle in one hand, and banging on the door with the other. "All right?" "What is it?" said Frodo, still shaken and bewildered. "What is it?" cried Mary. "It is time to get up. It is 4:30 and very foggy. Come on. Sam is already getting breakfast ready. Even Pippin is up. I am just going to saddle the ponies, and fetch the one that is to be the baggage carrier. Wake that slug guard Fatty. At least he must get up and see us off." Soon after 6 o'clock the 5 hobbits were ready to start. Fatty Bolger was still yawning. They stole quietly out of the house. Mary went in front leading a laden pony, and took his way along a path that went through a spinney behind the house, and then cut across several fields. The leaves of trees were glistening, and every twig was dripping, the grass was grey with cold dew. Everything was still, and far away noises seemed near and clear, fowls chattering in a yard, someone closing a door of a distant house. In their shed they found the ponies, sturdy little beasts of the kind loved by hobbits, not speedy, but good for a long day's work. They mounted, and soon they were riding off into the mist, which seemed to open reluctantly before them and close forbiddingly behind them. After riding for about an hour, slowly and without talking, they saw the hedge looming suddenly ahead. It was tall and netted over with silver cobwebs. "How are you going to get through this?" asked Fredgar. "Follow me," said Merry, "and you will see." He turned to the left along the hedge, and soon they came to a point where it bent inwards, running along the lip of a hollow. A cutting had been made, at some distance from the hedge, and went sloping gently down into the ground. It had walls of brick at the sides, which rose steadily, until suddenly they arched over and formed a tunnel that dived deep under the hedge and came out in the hollow on the other side. Here Fatty Bulger halted. "Goodbye, Frodo," he said. "I wish you were not going into the forest. I only hope you will not need rescuing before the day is out. But good luck to you, today and every day. If there are no worse things ahead than the old forest, I shall be lucky," said Frodo. "Tell Gandalf to hurry along the east road, we shall soon be back on it and going as fast as we can." "Goodbye," they cried, and rode down the slope and disappeared from Fredgar's sight into the tunnel. It was dark and damp. At the far end it was closed by a gate of thick-set iron bars. Merry got down and unlocked the gate, and when they had all passed through he pushed it to again. It shut with a clang, and the lock clicked. The sound was ominous. "There," said Merry. "You have left the Shire, and are now outside, and on the edge of the old forest." "Are the stories about it true?" asked Pippin. "I don't know what stories you mean," Merry answered. "If you mean the old bogey stories Fatty's nurses used to tell him, about goblins and wolves and things of that sort, I should say no. At any rate I don't believe them. But the forest is queer. Everything in it is very much more alive, more aware of what is going on, so to speak, than things are in the Shire. And the trees do not like strangers. They watch you. They are usually content merely to watch you, as long as daylight lasts, and don't do much. Occasionally the most unfriendly ones may drop a branch, or stick a root out, or grasp at you with a long trailer. But at night things can be most alarming, or so I am told. I have only once or twice been in here after dark, and then only near the hedge. I thought all the trees were whispering to each other, passing news and plots along in an unintelligible language, and the branches swayed and groped without any wind. They do say the trees do actually move, and can surround strangers and hem them in. In fact, long ago they attacked the hedge, they came and planted themselves right by it, and leaned over it. But the hobbits came and cut down hundreds of trees, and made a great bonfire in the forest, and burned all the ground in a long strip east of the hedge. After that the trees gave up the attack, but they became very unfriendly. There is still a wide bare space not far inside where the bonfire was made." "Is it only the trees that are dangerous?" asked Pippin. "There are various queer things living deep in the forest, and on the far side," said Merry, "or at least I have heard so, but I have never seen any of them. But something makes paths whenever one comes inside. One finds open tracks, but they seem to shift and change from time to time in a queer fashion. Not far from this tunnel there is, or was for a long time, the beginning of quite a broad path leading to the bonfire glade, and then on more or less in our direction, east and a little north. That is the path I am going to try and find." The hobbits now left the tunnel gate and rode across the wide hollow. On the far side was a faint path leading up onto the floor of the forest, 100 yards and more beyond the hedge, but it vanished as soon as it brought them under the trees. Looking back they could see the dark line of the hedge through the stems of trees that were already thick about them. Looking ahead they could see only tree trunks of innumerable sizes and shapes, straight or bent, twisted, leaning, squat or slender, smooth or gnarled and branched, and all the stems were green or gray with moss and slimy, shaggy growths. Mary alone seemed fairly cheerful. "You had better lead on and find that path," Frodo said to him. "Don't let us lose one another, or forget which way the hedge lies." They picked a way among the trees, and their ponies plodded along, carefully avoiding the many writhing and interlacing roots. There was no undergrowth. The ground was rising steadily, and as they went forward it seemed that the trees became taller, darker, and thicker. There was no sound, except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the still leaves. For the moment there was no whispering or movement among the branches, but they all got an uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched with disapproval, deepening to dislike and even enmity. The feeling steadily grew, until they found themselves looking up quickly, or glancing back over their shoulders, as if they expected a sudden blow. There was not as yet any sign of a path, and the trees seemed constantly to bar their way. Pippin suddenly felt that he could not bear it any longer, and without warning let out a shout. "Oi! Oi!" he cried. "I am not going to do anything. Just let me pass through, will you?" The others halted startled, but the cry fell as if muffled by a heavy curtain. There was no echo or answer, though the wood seemed to become more crowded and more watchful than before. "I should not shout, if I were you," said Merry. "It does more harm than good." Frodo began to wonder if it were possible to find a way through, and if he had been right to make the others come into this abominable wood. Merry was looking from side to side, and seemed already uncertain which way to go. Pippin noticed it. "It has not taken you long to lose us," he said. But at that moment Merry gave a whistle of relief and pointed ahead. "Well, well," he said. "These trees do shift. There is the bonfire glade in front of us, or I hope so, but the path to it seems to have moved away." The light grew clearer as they went forward. Suddenly they came out of the trees and found themselves in a wide circular space. There was sky above them, blue and clear to their surprise, for down under the forest roof they had not been able to see the rising morning and the lifting of the mist. The sun was not, however, high enough yet to shine down into the clearing, though its light was on the tree tops. The leaves were all thicker and greener about the edges of the glade, enclosing it with an almost solid wall. No tree grew there, only rough grass and many tall plants, stocky and faded hemlocks and wood parsley, fireweed seeding into fluffy ashes, and rampant nettles and thistles. A dreary place, but it seemed a charming and cheerful garden after the close forest. The hobbits felt encouraged, and looked up hopefully at the broadening daylight in the sky. At the far side of the glade there was a break in the wall of trees, and a clear path beyond it. They could see it running on into the wood, wide in places and open above, though every now and again the trees drew in and overshadowed it with their dark boughs. Up this path they rode. They were still climbing gently, but they now went much quicker, and with better heart, for it seemed to them that the forest had relented, and was going to let them pass unhindered after all. But after a while the air began to get hot and stuffy. The trees drew close again on either side, and they could no longer see far ahead. Now stronger than ever they felt again the ill will of the wood pressing on them. So silent was it that the fall of their ponies' hoofs, rustling on dead leaves and occasionally stumbling on hidden roots, seemed to thud in their ears. Frodo tried to sing a song to encourage them, but his voice sank to a murmur. "Oh, wanderers in the shadowed land, despair not, for though dark they stand, all woods there be must end at last. And see the open sun go past, the setting sun, the rising sun, the day's end, or the day begun. For east or west all woods must fail." Fail, even as he said the word his voice faded into silence. The air seemed heavy and the making of words wearisome. Just behind them a large branch fell from an old overhanging tree with a crash into the path. The trees seemed to close in before them. "They do not like all that about ending and failing," said Merry. "I should not sing any more at present. Wait till we do get to the edge, and then we'll turn and give them a rousing chorus." He spoke cheerfully, and if he felt any great anxiety, he did not show it. The others did not answer. They were depressed. A heavy weight was settling steadily on Frodo's heart, and he regretted now with every step forward that he had ever thought of challenging the menace of the trees. He was, indeed, just about to stop and propose going back, if that was still possible, when things took a new turn. The path stopped climbing, and became for a while nearly level. The dark trees drew aside, and ahead they could see the path going almost straight forward. Before them, but some distance off, there stood a green hilltop, treeless, rising like a bald head out of the encircling wood. The path seemed to be making directly for it. They now hurried forward again, delighted with the thought of climbing out for a while above the roof of the forest. The path dipped, and then again began to climb upwards, leading them at last to the foot of the steep hillside. There it left the trees and faded into the turf. The wood stood all round the hill like thick hair that ended sharply in a circle round a shaven crown. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round until they reached the top. There they stood and gazed about them. The air was gleaming and sunlit, but hazy, and they could not see to any great distance. Near at hand the mist was now almost gone, though here and there it lay in hollows of the wood, and to the south of them, out of a deep fold cutting right across the forest, the fog still rose like steam or wisps of white smoke. "That," said Merry, pointing with his hand, "that is the line of the Withywindle. It comes down out of the downs and flows southwest through the midst of the forest to join the Brandywine below Haysend. We don't want to go that way. The Withywindle Valley is said to be the queerest part of the whole wood, the center from which all the queerness comes, as it were." The others looked in the direction that Merry pointed out, but they could see little but mists over the damp and deep-cut valley, and beyond it the southern half of the forest faded from view. The sun on the hilltop was now getting hot. It must have been about 11 o'clock, but the autumn haze still prevented them from seeing much in other directions. In the west they could not make out either the line of the hedge or the valley of the Brandywine beyond it. Northward, where they looked most hopefully, they could see nothing that might be the line of the Great East Road, for which they were making. They were on an island in a sea of trees, and the horizon was veiled. On the southeastern side the ground fell very steeply, as if the slopes of the hill were continued far down under the trees, like island shores that really are the sides of a mountain rising out of deep waters. They sat on the green edge and looked out over the woods below them, while they ate their midday meal. As the sun rose and past noon they glimpsed far off in the east the grey-green lines of the downs that lay beyond the old forest on that side. That cheered them greatly, for it was good to see a sight of anything beyond the wood's borders, though they did not mean to go that way, if they could help it. The Barrow Downs had as sinister a reputation in Hobbit legend as the forest itself. At length they made up their minds to go on again. The path that had brought them to the hill reappeared on the northward side, but they had not followed it far before they became aware that it was bending steadily to the right. Soon it began to descend rapidly and they guessed that it must actually be heading towards the Withywindle Valley, not at all the direction they wished to take. After some discussion they decided to leave this misleading path and strike northward, for although they had not been able to see it from the hilltop, the road must lie that way, and it could not be many miles off. Also northward, and to the left of the path, the land seemed low-be drier and more open, climbing up to slopes where the trees were thinner, and pines and firs replaced the oaks and ashes and other strange and nameless trees of the denser wood. At first their choice seemed to be good. They got along at a fair speed, though whenever they got a glimpse of the sun in an open glade they seemed unaccountably to have veered eastwards. But after a time the trees began to close in again, just where they had appeared from a distance to be thinner and less tangled. Then deep folds in the ground were discovered unexpectedly, like the ruts of great giant wheels or wide moats and sunken roads long disused and choked with brambles. These lay usually right across their line of march, and could only be crossed by scrambling down and out again, which was troublesome and difficult with their ponies. Each time they climbed down they found the hollow filled with thick bushes and matted undergrowth, which somehow would not yield to the left, but only gave way when they turned to the right, and they had to go some distance along the bottom before they could find a way up the further bank. Each time they clambered out, the trees seemed deeper and darker, and always to the left and upwards it was most difficult to find a way, and they were forced to the right and downwards. After an hour or two they had lost all clear sense of direction, though they knew well enough that they had long ceased to go northward at all. They were being headed off, and were simply following a course chosen for them, eastwards and southwards, into the heart of the forest and not out of it. The afternoon was wearing away when they scrambled and stumbled into a fold that was wider and deeper than any they had yet met. It was so steep and overhung that it proved impossible to climb out of it again, either forwards or backwards, without leaving their ponies and their baggage behind. All they could do was to follow the fold, downwards. The ground grew soft, and in places boggy, springs appeared in the banks, and soon they found themselves following a brook that trickled and babbled through a weedy bed. Then the ground began to fall rapidly, and the brook, growing strong and noisy, flowed and leaped swiftly downhill. They were in a deep dim-lit gully overarched by trees high above them. After stumbling along for some way along the stream, they came quite suddenly out of the gloom. As if through a gate they saw the sunlight before them. Coming to the opening they found that they had made their way down through a cleft in a high steep bank, almost a cliff. At its feet was a wide space of grass and reeds, and in the distance could be glimpsed another bank almost as steep. A golden afternoon of late sunshine lay warm and drowsy upon the hidden land between. In the midst of it there wound lazily a dark river of brown water, bordered with ancient willows, arched over with willows, blocked with fallen willows, and flecked with thousands of faded willow leaves. The air was thick with them, fluttering yellow from the branches, for there was a warm and gentle breeze blowing softly in the valley, and the reeds were rustling, and the willow boughs were creaking. "Well, now I have at least some notion of where we are," said Mary. "We have come almost in the opposite direction to which we intended. This is the river Withywindle. I will go on and explore." He passed out into the sunshine and disappeared into the long grasses. After a while he reappeared, and reported that there was fairly solid ground between the cliff foot and the river. In some places firm turf went down to the water's edge. "What's more," he said, "there seems to be something like a footpath winding along on this side of the river. If we turn left and follow it, we shall be bound to come out on the east side of the forest eventually." "I dare say," said Pippin. "That is, if the track goes on so far, and does not simply lead us into a bog and leave us there. Who made the track, do you suppose, and why? I am sure it was not for our benefit. I am getting very suspicious of this forest and everything in it, and I begin to believe all the stories about it. And have you any idea how far eastward we should have to go?" "No," said Mary, "I haven't. I don't know in the least how far down the Withywindle we are, or who could possibly come here often enough to make a path along it. But there is no other way out that I can see or think of." There being nothing else for it, they filed out, and Mary led them to the path that he had discovered. Everywhere the reeds and grasses were lush and tall, in places far above their heads, but once found, the path was easy to follow, as it turned and twisted, picking out the sounder ground among the bogs and pools. Here and there it passed over other rills, running down gullies into the Withywindle out of the higher forest lands, and at these points there were tree trunks or bundles of brushwood laid carefully across. The hobbits began to feel very hot. There were armies of flies of all kinds buzzing round their ears, and the afternoon sun was burning on their backs. At last they came suddenly into a thin shade. Great grey branches reached across the path. Each step forward became more reluctant than the last. Sleepiness seemed to be creeping out of the ground and up their legs, and falling softly out of the air upon their heads and eyes. Frodo felt his chin go down and his head nod. Just in front of him Pippin fell forward onto his knees. Frodo halted. "It's no good," he heard Merry saying. "Can't go another step without rest. Must have nap. It's cool under the willows." Less flies. Frodo did not like the sound of this. Come on, he cried. We can't have a nap yet. We must get clear of the forest first. But the others were too far gone to care. Beside them Sam stood yawning and blinking stupidly. Suddenly Frodo himself felt sleep overwhelming him. His head swam. There now seemed hardly a sound in the air. The flies had stopped buzzing. Only a gentle noise on the edge of hearing, a soft fluttering as of a song half whispered, seemed to stir in the boughs above. He lifted his heavy eyes and saw leaning over him a huge willow tree, old and hoary. Enormous it looked, its sprawling branches going up like reaching arms with many long-fingered hands, its knotted and twisted trunk gaping in wide fissures that creaked faintly as the boughs moved. The leaves fluttering against the bright sky dazzled him, and he toppled over, lying where he fell upon the grass. Merry and Pippin dragged themselves forward and lay down with their backs to the willow trunk. Behind them the great cracks gaped wide to receive them as the tree swayed and creaked. They looked up at the gray and yellow leaves, moving softly against the light, and singing. They shut their eyes, and then it seemed that they could almost hear words, cool words, saying something about water and sleep. They gave themselves up to the spell and fell fast asleep at the foot of the great grey willow. Frodo lay for a while fighting with the sleep that was overpowering him, then with an effort he struggled to his feet again. He felt a compelling desire for cool water. "Wait for me, Sam," he stammered. "Must bathe feet a minute." Half in a dream he wandered forward to the riverward side of the tree, where great winding roots grew out into the stream, like gnarled dragonets straining down to drink. He straddled one of these, and paddled his hot feel in the cool brown water, and there he too suddenly fell asleep with his back against the tree. Sam sat down and scratched his head, and yawned like a cavern. He was worried. The afternoon was getting late, and he thought this sudden sleepiness uncanny. "There's more behind this than sun and warm air," he muttered to himself. "I don't like this great big tree. I don't trust it. Hark at it singing about sleep now. This won't do at all." He pulled himself to his feet, and staggered off to see what had become of the ponies. He found that two had wandered on a good way along the path, and he had just caught them and brought them back towards the others, when he heard two noises, one loud, and the other soft but very clear. One was the splash of something heavy falling into the water, the other was a noise like the snick of a lock when a door quietly closes fast. He rushed back to the bank. Frodo was in the water close to the edge, and a great tree root seemed to be over him and holding him down, but he was not struggling. Sam gripped him by the jacket, and dragged him from under the root, and then with difficulty hauled him onto the bank. Almost at once he woke, and coughed, and spluttered. "Do you know, Sam," he said at length, "the beastly tree threw me in. I felt it. The big root just twisted round and tipped me in." "You were dreaming, I expect, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "You shouldn't sit in such a place, if you feel sleepy." "What about the others?" Frodo asked. "I wonder what sort of dreams they are having." They went round to the other side of the tree, and then Sam understood the click that he had heard. Pippin had vanished. The crack by which he had laid himself had closed together, so that not a chink could be seen. Merry was trapped, another crack had closed about his waist, his legs lay outside, but the rest of him was inside a dark opening, the edges of which gripped like a pair of pincers. Frodo and Sam beat first upon the tree trunk where Pippin had lain. They then struggled frantically to pull open the jaws of the crack that held poor Merry. It was quite useless. "What a foul thing to happen," cried Frodo wildly. "Why did we ever come into this dreadful forest? I wish we were all back at Crick Hollow." He kicked the tree with all his strength, heedless of his own feet. A hardly perceptible shiver ran through the stem and up into the branches, the leaves rustled and whispered, but with a sound now of faint and far-off laughter. "I suppose we haven't got an axe among our luggage, Mr. Frodo?" asked Sam. "I brought a little hatchet for chopping firewood," said Frodo. That wouldn't be much use. Wait a minute, cried Sam, struck by an idea suggested by firewood. We might do something with fire. We might, said Frodo doubtfully. We might succeed in roasting Pippin alive inside. We might try to hurt or frighten this tree to begin with, said Sam fiercely. If it don't let them go, I'll have it down, if I have to gnaw it. He ran to the ponies and before long came back with 2 tinder boxes and a hatchet. Quickly they gathered dry grass and leaves, and bits of bark, and made a pile of broken twigs and chopped sticks. These they heaped against the trunk on the far side of the tree from the prisoners. As soon as Sam had struck a spark into the tinder, it kindled the dry grass and a flurry of flame and smoke went up. The twigs crackled. Little fingers of fire licked against the dry scored rind of the ancient tree and scorched it. A tremor ran through the whole willow. The leaves seemed to hiss above their heads with a sound of pain and anger. A loud scream came from Merry, and from far inside the tree they heard Pippin give a muffled yell. Put it out! Put it out, cried Merry. He'll squeeze me in too, if you don't. He says so. Who? What? Shouted Frodo, rushing round to the other side of the tree. Put it out! Put it out, begged Merry. The branches of the willow began to sway violently. There was a sound as of a wind rising and spreading outwards to the branches of all the other trees round about, as though they had dropped a stone into the quiet slumber of the river valley and set up ripples of anger that ran out over the whole forest. Sam kicked at the little fire and stamped out the sparks. But Frodo, without any clear idea of why he did so, or what he hoped for, ran along the path crying help! 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 It seemed to him that he could hardly hear the sound of his own shrill voice. It was blown away from him by the willow wind and drowned in a clamour of leaves, as soon as the words left his mouth. He felt desperate, lost and witless. Suddenly he slopped. There was an answer, or so he thought, but it seemed to come from behind him, away down the path further back in the forest. He turned round and listened, and soon there could be no doubt, someone was singing a song. A deep glad voice was singing carelessly and happily, but it was singing nonsense. Hey Dole! Merry Dole! Ring a dong de lo! Ring a dong! Hop along! Fal lal the willow! Tom Bomb, Jolly Tom, Tom Bombadillo! Half hopeful and half afraid of some new danger, Frodo and Sam now both stood still. Suddenly out of a long string of nonsense words, or so they seemed, the voice rose up loud and clear and burst into this song. Hey! Come Merry Dot! Derry Dole! My darling! Light goes the weather wind and the feathered starling. Down along Underhill, shining in the sunlight. Waiting on the doorstep for the cold starlight. There my pretty lady is. River woman's daughter. Slender as the willow wand, clearer than the water. Old Tom Bombadil water lilies bringing. Comes hopping home again. Can you hear him singing? Hey! Come Merry Dole! Deny Dole! And Mario! Goldberry, Goldberry, merry yellow berry-o. Poor old willow man, you tuck your roots away. Tom's in a hurry now. Evening will follow day. Tom's going home again water lilies bringing. Hey! Come Derry Dole! Can you hear me singing? Frodo and Sam stood as if enchanted. The wind puffed out. The leaves hung silently again on stiff branches. There was another burst of song, and then suddenly, hopping and dancing along the path, there appeared above the reeds an old battered hat with a tall crown and a long blue feather stuck in the band. With another hop and a bound there came into view a man, or so it seemed. At any rate he was too large and heavy for a hobbit, if not quite tall enough for one of the big people, though he made noise enough for one, slumping along with great yellow boots on his thick legs, and charging through grass and rushes like a cow going down to drink. He had a blue coat and a long brown beard, his eyes were blue and bright, and his face was red as a ripe apple, but creased into 100 wrinkles of laughter. In his hands he carried on a large leaf as on a tray a small pile of white water lilies. "Help!" cried Frodo and Sam, running towards him with their hands stretched out. "Whoa! Whoa! Steady there!" cried the old man, holding up one hand, and they stopped short, as if they had been struck stiff. "Now, my little fellows, where be you a going to, puffing like a bellows? What's the matter here then? Do you know who I am? I'm Tom Bombadil. Tell me what's your trouble. Tom's in a hurry now. Don't you crush my lilies." "My friends are caught in the willow tree," cried Frodo breathlessly. "Master Merry's being squeezed in a crack," cried Sam. "What?" shouted Tom Bombadil, leaping up in the air. "Old Man Willow? Not worse than that, eh? That can soon be mended. I know the tune for him. Old Grey Willow Man. I'll freeze his marrow cold, if he don't behave himself. I'll sing his roots off. I'll sing a wind up and blow leaf and branch away. Old Man Willow." Setting down his lilies carefully on the grass, he ran to the tree. There he saw Merry's feet still sticking out, the rest had already been drawn further inside. Tom put his mouth to the crack and began singing into it in a low voice. They could not catch the words, but evidently Merry was aroused. His legs began to kick. Tom sprang away, and breaking off a hanging branch smote the side of the willow with it. "You let them out again, Old Man Willow," he said. "What be you a thinking of? You should not be waking. Eat earth. Dig deep. Drink water. Go to sleep. Bombadil is talking." He then seized Merry's feet and drew him out of the suddenly widening crack. There was a tearing creak and the other crack split open, and out of it Pippin sprang, as if he had been kicked. Then with a loud snap both cracks closed fast again. A shudder ran through the tree from root to tip, and complete silence fell. "Thank you," said the hobbits, one after the other. Tom Bombadil burst out laughing. "Well, my little fellows," said he, stooping so that he peered into their faces. "You shall come home with me. The table is all laden with yellow cream, honeycomb, and white bread and butter. Goldberry is waiting. Time enough for questions around the supper table. You follow after me as quick as you are able." With that he picked up his lilies, and then with a beckoning wave of his hand went hopping and dancing along the path eastward, still singing loudly and nonsensically. Too surprised and too relieved to talk, the hobbits followed after him as fast as they could. But that was not fast enough. Tom soon disappeared in front of them, and the noise of his singing got fainter and further away. Suddenly his voice came floating back to them in a loud halloo. "Hop along, my little friends, up the Withywindle. Tom's going on ahead, candles for to kindle. Down west sinks the sun, soon you will be groping. When the night shadows fall, then the door will open. Out of the window panes light will twinkle yellow. Fear no alder black. Heed no hoary willow. Fear neither root nor bough. Tom goes on before you. Hey now, Merry Dot. We'll be waiting for you." After that the hobbits heard no more. Almost at once the sun seemed to sink into the trees behind them. They thought of the slanting light of evening glittering on the Brandywine River, and the windows of Bucklebury beginning to gleam with hundreds of lights. Great shadows fell across them, trunks and branches of trees hung dark and threatening over the path. White mists began to rise and curl on the surface of the river and stray about the roots of the trees upon its borders. Out of the very ground at their feet a shadowy steam arose and mingled with the swiftly falling dusk. It became difficult to follow the path, and they were very tired. Their legs seemed leaden. Strange furtive noises ran among the bushes and reeds on either side of them, and if they looked up to the pale sky, they caught sight of queer gnarled and knobbly faces that gloomed dark against the twilight, and leered down at them from the high bank and the edges of the wood. They began to feel that all this country was unreal, and that they were stumbling through an ominous dream that led to no awakening. Just as they felt their feet slowing down to a standstill, they noticed that the ground was gently rising. The water began to murmur. In the darkness they caught the white glimmer of foam, where the river flowed over a short fall. Then suddenly the trees came to an end and the mists were left behind. They stepped out from the forest, and found a wide sweep of grass welling up before them. The river, now small and swift, was leaping merrily down to meet them, glinting here and there in the light of the stars, which were already shining in the sky. The grass under their feet was smooth and short, as if it had been mown or shaven. The eaves of the forest behind were clipped, and trim as a hedge. The path was now plain before them, well tended and bordered with stone. It wound up onto the top of a grassy knoll, now grey under the pale starry night, and there, still high above them on a further slope, they saw the twinkling lights of a house. Down again the path went, and then up again, up a long smooth hillside of turf, towards the light. Suddenly a wide yellow beam flowed out brightly from a door that was opened. There was Tom Bombadil's house before them, up, down, under hill. Behind it a steep shoulder of the land lay grey and bare, and beyond that the dark shapes of the Barrow Downs stalked away into the eastern night. They all hurried forward, hobbits and ponies. Already half their weariness and all their fears had fallen from them. Hey! Come merry dole! Rolled out the song to greet them. Hey! Come derry dole! Hop along, my hearties! Hobbits! Ponies all! We are fond of parties. Now let the fun begin. Let us sing together. Then another clear voice, as young and as ancient as spring, like the song of a glad water flowing down into the night from a bright morning in the hills, came falling like silver to meet them. Now let the song begin. Let us sing together. Of sun, stars, moon, and mist, rain and cloudy weather. Light on the budding leaf, dew on the feather. Wind on the open hill, bells on the heather. Reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water. Old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. And with that song the hobbits stood upon the threshold, and a golden light was all about them. Chapter 7. In the house of Tom Bombadil. The four hobbits stepped over the wide stone threshold, and stood still, blinking. They were in a long low room, filled with the light of lamps swinging from the beams of the roof, and on the table of dark polished wood stood many candles, tall and yellow, burning brightly. In a chair, at the far side of the room facing the outer door, sat a woman. Her long yellow hair rippled down her shoulders, her gown was green, green as young reeds, shot with silver like beads of dew, and her belt was of gold, shaped like a chain of flag lilies set with the pale blue eyes of forget-me-nots. About her feel in wide vessels of green and brown earthenware, white water lilies were floating, so that she seemed to be enthroned in the midst of a pool. Enter, good guests, she said, and as she spoke they knew that it was her clear voice they had heard singing. They came a few timid steps further into the room, and began to bow low, feeling strangely surprised and awkward, like folk that, knocking at a cottage door to beg for a drink of water, have been answered by a fair young elf queen clad in living flowers. But before they could say anything, she sprang lightly up and over the lily bowls, and ran laughing towards them, and as she ran her gown rustled softly like the wind in the flowering borders of a river. Come dear folk, she said, taking Frodo by the hand. Laugh and be merry. I am Goldberry, daughter of the river. Then lightly she passed them and closing the door she turned her back to it, with her white arms spread out across it. Let us shut out the night, she said. For you are still afraid, perhaps, of mist and tree shadows and deep water, and untamed things. Fear nothing. For tonight you are under the roof of Tom Bombadil. The hobbits looked at her in wonder, and she looked at each of them and smiled. Fair Lady Goldberry, said Frodo at last, feeling his heart moved with a joy that he did not understand. He stood as he had at times stood enchanted by fair elven voices, but the spell that was now laid upon him was different, less keen and lofty was the delight, but deeper and nearer to mortal heart, marvelous and yet not strange. Fair Lady Goldberry, he said again. Now the joy that was hidden in the songs we heard is made plain to me. O slender as a willow wand. O clearer than clear water. O reed by the living pool. Fair river daughter. O springtime and summertime, and spring again after. O wind on the waterfall, and the leaves' laughter. Suddenly he stopped and stammered, overcome with surprise to hear himself saying such things. But Goldberry laughed. Welcome, she said. I had not heard that folk of the Shire were so sweet-tongued. But I see you are an elf friend, the light in your eyes and the ring in your voice tells it. This is a merry meeting. Sit now, and wait for the master of the house. He will not be long. He is tending your tired beasts. The hobbits sat down gladly in low rush-seated chairs, while Goldberry busied herself about the table, and their eyes followed her, for the slender grace of her movement filled them with quiet delight. From somewhere behind the house came the sound of singing. Every now and again they caught, among many a derry-dole and a merry-dole and a ring-a-ding-delo, the repeated words. Old Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow. Bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. Fair lady, said Frodo again after a while. Tell me, if my asking does not seem foolish, who is Tom Bombadil? He is, said Goldberry, staying her swift movements and smiling. Frodo looked at her questioningly. He is, as you have seen him, she said in answer to his look. He is the master of wood, water, and hill. Then all this strange land belongs to him. No indeed, she answered, and her smile faded. That would indeed be a burden, she added in a low voice, as if to herself. The trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land belong each to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on the hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master. A door opened and in came Tom Bombadil. He had now no hat and his thick brown hair was crowned with autumn leaves. He laughed, and going to Goldberry, took her hand. Here's my pretty lady, he said, bowing to the hobbits. Here's my Goldberry clothed all in silver green with flowers in her girdle. Is the table laden? I see yellow cream and honeycomb, and white bread, and butter, milk, cheese, and green herbs and ripe berries gathered. Is that enough for us? Is the supper ready? It is, said Goldberry, but the guests perhaps are not. Tom clapped his hands and cried, Tom, Tom, your guests are tired, and you had near forgotten. Come now, my merry friends, and Tom will refresh you. You shall clean grimy hands, and wash your weary faces, cast off your muddy cloaks and comb out your tangles. He opened the door, and they followed him down a short passage and round a sharp turn. They came to a low room with a sloping roof, a penthouse, it seemed, built onto the north end of the house. Its walls were of clean stone, but they were mostly covered with green hanging mats and yellow curtains. The floor was flagged, and strewn with fresh green rushes. There were 4 deep mattresses, each piled with white blankets, laid on the floor along one side. Against the opposite wall was a long bench laden with white earthenware basins, and beside it stood brown ewers filled with water, some cold, some steaming hot. There were soft green slippers set ready beside each bed. Before long, washed and refreshed, the hobbits were seated at the table, 2 on each side, while at either end sat Goldberry and the master. It was a long and merry meal. Though the hobbits ate, as only famished hobbits can eat, there was no lack. The drink in their drinking bowls seemed to be clear cold water, yet it went to their hearts like wine and set free their voices. The guests became suddenly aware that they were singing merrily, as if it was easier and more natural than talking. At last Tom and Goldberry rose and cleared the table swiftly. The guests were commanded to sit quiet, and were set in chairs, each with a footstool to his tired feet. There was a fire in the wide hearth before them, and it was burning with a sweet smell, as if it were built of apple wood. When everything was set in order, all the lights in the room were put out, except one lamp and a pair of candles at each end of the chimney shelf. Then Goldberry came and stood before them, holding a candle, and she wished them each a good night and deep sleep. "Have peace now," she said, "until the morning. Heed no nightly noises. For nothing passes door and window here save moonlight and starlight and the wind off the hilltop. Good night." She passed out of the room with a glimmer and a rustle. The sound of her footsteps was like a stream falling gently away downhill over cool stones in the quiet of night. Tom sat on a while beside them in silence, while each of them tried to muster the courage to ask one of the many questions he had meant to ask at supper. Sleep gathered on their eyelids. At last Frodo spoke. "Did you hear me calling, Master, or was it just chance that brought you at that moment?" Tom stirred like a man shaken out of a pleasant dream. What?" said he. "Did I hear you calling?" "Nay, I did not hear, I was busy singing." "Just chance brought me then, if chance you call it. It was no plan of mine, though I was waiting for you. We heard news of you, and learned that you were wandering. We guessed you'd come ere long down to the water, all paths lead that way, down to Withywindle. Old Grey Willow Man, he's a mighty singer, and it's hard for little folk to escape his cunning mazes." But Tom had an errand there, that he dared not hinder. Tom nodded as if sleep was taking him again, but he went on in a soft singing voice. "I had an errand there, gathering water lilies. Green leaves and lilies white to please my pretty lady. The last ere the year's end to keep them from the winter. To flower by her pretty feet till the snows are melted. Each year at summer's end I go to find them for her. In a wide pool, deep and clear, far down Withywindle. There they open first in spring and there they linger latest. By that pool long ago I found the river daughter. Fair young Goldberry sitting in the rushes. Sweet was her singing then, and her heart was beating." He opened his eyes and looked at them with a sudden glint of blue. "And that proved well for you, for now I shall no longer go down deep again along the forest water. Not while the year is old. Nor shall I be passing Old Man Willow's house this side of springtime. Not till the merry spring, when the river daughter dances down the withy path to bathe in the water." He fell silent again, but Frodo could not help asking one more question, the one he most desired to have answered. "Tell us, Master," he said, "about the Willow Man. What is he? I have never heard of him before." "No, don't," said Merry and Pippin together, sitting suddenly upright. "Not now. Not until the morning." "That is right," said the old man. "Now is the time for resting. Some things are ill to hear when the world's in shadow. Sleep till the morning light, rest on the pillow. Heed no nightly noise. Fear no grey willow." And with that he took down the lamp and blew it out, and grasping a candle in either hand he led them out of the room. Their mattresses and pillows were soft as down, and the blankets were of white wool. They had hardly laid themselves on the deep beds and drawn the light covers over them before they were asleep. In the dead night, Frodo lay in a dream without light. Then he saw the young moon rising, under its thin light there loomed before him a black wall of rock, pierced by a dark arch like a great gate. It seemed to Frodo that he was lifted up, and passing over he saw that the rock wall was a circle of hills, and that within it was a plain, and in the midst of the plain stood a pinnacle of stone, like a vast tower but not made by hands. On its top stood the figure of a man. The moon as it rose seemed to hang for a moment above his head and glistened in his white hair as the wind stirred it. Up from the dark plain below came the crying of fell voices, and the howling of many wolves. Suddenly a shadow, like the shape of great wings, passed across the moon. The figure lifted his arms and a light flashed from the staff that he wielded. A mighty eagle swept down and bore him away. The voices wailed and the wolves yammered. There was a noise like a strong wind blowing, and on it was borne the sound of hoofs, galloping, galloping, galloping from the east. Black riders. thought Frodo as he wakened, with the sound of the hoofs still echoing in his mind. He wondered if he would ever again have the courage to leave the safety of these stone walls. He lay motionless, still listening, but all was now silent, and at last he turned and fell asleep again or wandered into some other unremembered dream. At his side Pippin lay dreaming pleasantly, but a change came over his dreams and he turned and groaned. Suddenly he woke, or thought he had waked, and yet still heard in the darkness the sound that had disturbed his dream, tip-tap, squeak. The noise was like branches fretting in the wind, twig fingers scraping wall and window, creak, creak, creak. He wondered if there were willow trees close to the house, and then suddenly he had a dreadful feeling that he was not in an ordinary house at all, but inside the willow and listening to that horrible dry creaking voice laughing at him again. He sat up, and felt the soft pillows yield to his hands, and he lay down again relieved. He seemed to hear the echo of words in his ears, fear nothing. Have peace until the morning. Heed no nightly noises. Then he went to sleep again. It was the sound of water that Merry heard falling into his quiet sleep, water streaming down gently, and then spreading irresistibly all round the house into a dark shoreless pool. It gurgled under the walls, and was rising slowly but surely. I shall be drowned, he thought. It will find its way in, and then I shall drown. He felt that he was lying in a soft slimy bog, and springing up he set his fool on the corner of a cold hard flagstone. Then he remembered where he was and lay down again. He seemed to hear or remember hearing, nothing passes doors or windows save moonlight and starlight and the wind off the hilltop. A little breath of sweet air moved the curtain. He breathed deep and fell asleep again. As far as he could remember, Sam slept through the night in deep content, if logs are contented. They woke up, all four at once, in the morning light. Tom was moving about the room whistling like a starling. When he heard them stir he clapped his hands, and cried, "Hey! Come merry dole! Derry dole! My hearties!" He drew back the yellow curtains, and the hobbits saw that these had covered the windows, at either end of the room, one looking east and the other looking west. They leapt up refreshed. Frodo ran to the eastern window, and found himself looking into a kitchen garden grey with dew. He had half expected to see turf right up to the walls, turf all pocked with hoof prints. Actually his view was screened by a tall line of beans on poles, but above and far beyond them the grey top of the hill loomed up against the sunrise. It was a pale morning, in the east, behind long clouds like lines of soiled wool stained red at the edges, lay glimmering deeps of yellow. The sky spoke of rain to come, but the light was broadening quickly, and the red flowers on the beans began to glow against the wet green leaves. Pippin looked out of the western window, down into a pool of mist. The forest was hidden under a fog. It was like looking down onto a sloping cloud roof from above. There was a fold or channel where the mist was broken into many plumes and billows, the valley of the Withywindle. The stream ran down the hill on the left and vanished into the white shadows. Near at hand was a flower garden and a clipped hedge silver netted, and beyond that grey shaven grass pale with dewdrops. There was no willow tree to be seen. "Good morning, merry friends," cried Tom, opening the eastern window wide. A cool air flowed in, it had a rainy smell. "Sun won't show her face much today. I'm thinking. I have been walking wide, leaping on the hilltops, since the grey dawn began, nosing wind and weather, wet grass underfoot, wet sky above me. I wakened Goldberry singing under window, but not wakes hobbit folk in the early morning. In the night little folk wake up in the darkness, and sleep after light has come. Ring-a-ding-de-lo. Wake now, my merry friends. Forget the nightly noises. Ring-a-ding-de-lo dell. Derry dell, my hearties. If you come soon you'll find breakfast on the table. If you come late you'll get grass and rainwater." Needless to say, not that Tom's threat sounded very serious, the hobbits came soon, and left the table late and only when it was beginning to look rather empty. Neither Tom nor Goldberry were there. Tom could be heard about the house, clattering in the kitchen, and up and down the stairs, and singing here and there outside. The room looked westward over the mist-clouded valley, and the window was open. Water dripped down from the thatched eaves above. Before they had finished breakfast the clouds had joined into an unbroken roof, and a straight grey rain came softly and steadily down. Behind its deep curtain the forest was completely veiled. As they looked out of the window there came falling gently as if it was flowing down the rain out of the sky, the clear voice of Goldberry singing up above them. They could hear few words, but it seemed plain to them that the song was a rain song, as sweet as showers on dry hills, that told the tale of a river from the spring in the highlands to the sea far below. The hobbits listened with delight, and Frodo was glad in his heart, and blessed the kindly weather, because it delayed them from departing. The thought of going had been heavy upon him from the moment he awoke, but he guessed now that they would not go further that day. The upper wind settled in the west and deeper and wetter clouds rolled up to spill their laden rain on the bare heads of the downs. Nothing could be seen all round the house but falling water. Frodo stood near the open door and watched the white chalky path turn into a little river of milk and go bubbling away down into the valley. Tom Bombadil came trotting round the corner of the house, waving his arms as if he was warding off the rain, and indeed when he sprang over the threshold he seemed quite dry, except for his boots. These he took off and put in the chimney corner. Then he sat in the largest chair and called the hobbits to gather round him. "This is Goldberry's washing day," he said, "and her autumn cleaning. Too wet for hobbit folk, let them rest while they are able. It's a good day for long tales, for questions and for answers, so Tom will start the talking." He then told them many remarkable stories, sometimes half as if speaking to himself, sometimes looking at them suddenly with a bright blue eye under his deep brows. Often his voice would turn to song, and he would get out of his chair and dance about. He told them tales of bees and flowers, the ways of trees, and the strange creatures of the forest, about the evil things and good things, things friendly and things unfriendly, cruel things and kind things, and secrets hidden under brambles. As they listened, they began to understand the lives of the forest, apart from themselves, indeed to feel themselves as the strangers where all other things were at home. Moving constantly in and out of his talk was Old Man Willow, and Frodo learned now enough to content him, indeed more than enough, for it was not comfortable lore. Tom's words laid bare the hearts of trees and their thoughts, which were often dark and strange, and filled with a hatred of things that go free upon the earth, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning, destroyers and usurpers. It was not called the Old Forest without reason, for it was indeed ancient, a survivor of vast forgotten woods, and in it there lived yet, aging no quicker than the hills, the fathers of trees, remembering times when they were lords. The countless years had filled them with pride and rooted wisdom, and with malice. But none were more dangerous than the great willow. His heart was rotten, but his strength was green, and he was cunning, and a master of winds, and his song and thought ran through the woods on both sides of the river. His great thirsty spirit drew power out of the earth and spread like fine root threads in the ground, and invisible twig fingers in the air, till it had under its dominion nearly all the trees of the forest from the hedge to the downs. Suddenly Tom's talk left the woods and went leaping up the young stream, over bubbling waterfalls, over pebbles and worn rocks, and among small flowers in close grass and wet crannies, wandering at last up onto the downs. They heard of the great barrows, and the green mounds, and the stone rings upon the hills and in the hollows among the hills. Sheep were bleating in flocks. Green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights. Kings of little kingdoms fought together, and the young sun shone like fire on the red metal of their new and greedy swords. There was victory and defeat, and towers fell, fortresses were burned, and flames went up into the sky. Gold was piled on the biers of dead kings and queens, and mounds covered them, and the stone doors were shut, and the grass grew over all. Sheep walked for a while biting the grass, but soon the hills were empty again. A shadow came out of dark places far away, and the bones were stirred in the mounds. Barrow Wights walked in the hollow places with the clink of rings on cold fingers, and gold chains in the wind. Stone rings grinned out of the ground like broken teeth in the moonlight. The hobbits shuddered. Even in the Shire the rumour of the Barrow Wights of the Barrow Downs beyond the forest had been heard. But it was not a tale that any hobbit liked to listen to, even by a comfortable fireside far away. These four now suddenly remembered what the joy of this house had driven from their minds, the house of Tom Bombadil nestled under the very shoulder of those dreaded hills. They lost the thread of his tale and shifted uneasily, looking aside at one another. When they caught his words again they found that he had now wandered into strange regions beyond their memory and beyond their waking thought, into limes when the world was wider, and the seas flowed straight to the western shore, and still on and back Tom went singing out into ancient starlight, when only the elf sires were awake. Then suddenly he slopped, and they saw that he nodded as if he was falling asleep. The hobbits sat still before him, enchanted, and it seemed as if, under the spell of his words, the wind had gone, and the clouds had dried up, and the day had been withdrawn, and darkness had come from east and west, and all the sky was filled with the light of white stars. Whether the morning and evening of one day or of many days had passed Frodo could not tell. He did not feel either hungry or tired, only filled with wonder. The stars shone through the window and the silence of the heavens seemed to be round him. He spoke at last out of his wonder and a sudden fear of that silence. "Who are you, master?" he asked. What?" said Tom sitting up, and his eyes glinting in the gloom. "Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tell me, who are you, alone, yourself and nameless? But you are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends, Tom was here before the river and the trees, Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people, and saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the Barrow Wights. When the elves passed westward, Tom was here already, before the seas were bent. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside. A shadow seemed to pass by the window, and the hobbits glanced hastily through the panes. When they turned again, Goldberry stood in the door behind, framed in light. She held a candle, shielding its flame from the draught with her hand, and the light flowed through it, like sunlight through a white shell. "The rain has ended," she said, "and new waters are running downhill, under the stars. Let us now laugh and be glad." "And let us have food and drink," cried Tom. "Long tales are thirsty. And long listening's hungry work, morning, noon, and evening." With that he jumped out of his chair, and with a bound took a candle from the chimney shelf and lit it in the flame that Goldberry held, then he danced about the table. Suddenly he hopped through the door and disappeared. Quickly he returned, bearing a large and laden tray. Then Tom and Goldberry set the table, and the hobbits sat half in wonder and half in laughter, so fair was the grace of Goldberry and so merry and odd the caperings of Tom. Yet in some fashion they seemed to weave a single dance, neither hindering the other, in and out of the room, and round about the table, and with great speed food and vessels and lights were set in order. The boards blazed with candles, white and yellow. Tom bowed to his guests. "Supper is ready," said Goldberry, and now the hobbits saw that she was clothed all in silver with a white girdle, and her shoes were like fish's mail. But Tom was all in clean blue, blue as rain-washed forget-me-nots, and he had green stockings. It was a supper even better than before. The hobbits under the spell of Tom's words may have missed one meal or many, but when the food was before them it seemed at least a week since they had eaten. They did not sing or even speak much for a while, and paid close attention to business. But after a time their hearts and spirit rose high again, and their voices rang out in mirth and laughter. After they had eaten, Goldberry sang many songs for them, songs that began merrily in the hills and fell softly down into silence, and in the silences they saw in their minds pools and waters wider than any they had known, and looking into them they saw the sky below them and the stars like jewels in the depths. Then once more she wished them each good night and left them by the fireside. But Tom now seemed wide awake and plied them with questions. He appeared already to know much about them and all their families, and indeed to know much of all the history and doings of the Shire down from days hardly remembered among the hobbits themselves. It no longer surprised them, but he made no secret that he owed his recent knowledge largely to Farmer Maggot, whom he seemed to regard as a person of more importance than they had imagined. There's earth under his old feet, and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open, said Tom. It was also clear that Tom had dealings with the elves, and it seemed that in some fashion, news had reached him from Gilder concerning the flight of Frodo. Indeed, so much did Tom know, and so cunning was his questioning, that Frodo found himself telling him more about Bilbo and his own hopes and fears than he had told before even to Gandalf. Tom wagged his head up and down, and there was a glint in his eyes when he heard of the riders. "Show me the precious ring," he said suddenly in the midst of the story, and Frodo, to his own astonishment, drew out the chain from his pocket, and unfastening the ring handed it at once to Tom. It seemed to grow larger as it lay for a moment on his big brown-skinned hand. Then suddenly he put it to his eye and laughed. For a second the hobbits had a vision, both comical and alarming, of his bright blue eye gleaming through a circle of gold. Then Tom put the ring round the end of his little finger and held it up to the candle light. For a moment the hobbits noticed nothing strange about this. Then they gasped. There was no sign of Tom disappearing. Tom laughed again, and then he spun the ring in the air, and it vanished with a flash. Frodo gave a cry, and Tom leaned forward and handed it back to him with a smile. Frodo looked at it closely, and rather suspiciously, like one who has lent a trinket to a juggler. It was the same ring, or looked the same and weighed the same, for that ring had always seemed to Frodo to weigh strangely heavy in the hand. But something prompted him to make sure. He was perhaps a trifle annoyed with Tom for seeming to make so light of what even Gandalf thought so perilously important. He waited for an opportunity, when the talk was going again, and Tom was telling an absurd story about badgers and their queer ways, then he slipped the ring on. Merry turned towards him to say something and gave a start, and checked an exclamation. Frodo was delighted. In a way it was his own ring all right, for Merry was staring blankly at his chair, and obviously could not see him. He got up and crept quietly away from the fireside towards the outer door. "Hey there," cried Tom, glancing towards him with a most seeing look in his shining eyes. "Hey. Come Frodo, there. Where be you going? Old Tom Bombadil's not as blind as that yet. Take off your golden ring. Your hand's more fair without it. Come back. Leave your game and sit down beside me. We must talk a while more, and think about the morning. Tom must teach the right road, and keep your feet from wandering." Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and taking off the ring he came and sat down again. Tom now told them that he reckoned the sun would shine tomorrow, and it would be a glad morning, and setting out would be hopeful. But they would do well to start early, for weather in that country was a thing that even Tom could not be sure of for long, and it would change sometimes quicker than he could change his jacket. "I am no weather master," he said, "nor is aught that goes on two legs." By his advice they decided to make nearly due north from his house, over the western and lower slopes of the downs. They might hope in that way to strike the east road in a day's journey, and avoid the barrows. He told them not to be afraid, but to mind their own business. "Keep to the green grass. Don't you go meddling with old stone or cold wights or prying in their houses, unless you be strong folk with hearts that never falter." He said this more than once, and he advised them to pass barrows by on the west side, if they chanced to stray near one. Then he taught them a rhyme to sing, if they should by ill luck fall into any danger or difficulty the next day. Ho! Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo. By water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow. By fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. When they had sung this all together after him, he clapped them each on the shoulder with a laugh, and taking candles led them back to their bedroom. Chapter 8. Fog on the Barrow Downs. That night they heard no noises. But either in his dreams or out of them, he could not tell which, Frodo heard a sweet singing running in his mind, a song that seemed to come like a pale light behind a grey rain curtain, and growing stronger to turn the veil all to glass and silver, until at last it was rolled back, and a far green country opened before him under a swift sunrise. The vision melted into waking, and there was Tom whistling like a tree full of birds, and the sun was already slanting down the hill and through the open window. Outside everything was green and pale gold. After breakfast, which they again ate alone, they made ready to say farewell, as nearly heavy of heart as was possible on such a morning, bright and clean under a washed autumn sky of thin blue. The air came fresh from the northwest. Their quiet ponies were almost frisky, sniffing and moving restlessly. Tom came out of the house and waved his hat and danced upon the doorstep, bidding the hobbits to get up and be off and go with good speed. They rode off along a path that wound away from behind the house, and went slanting up towards the north end of the hill brow under which it sheltered. They had just dismounted to lead their ponies up the last steep slope, when suddenly Frodo stopped. "Goldberry," he cried. "My fair lady, clad all in silver green. We have never said farewell to her, nor seen her since the evening." He was so distressed that he turned back, but at that moment a clear call came rippling down. There on the hill brow she stood beckoning to them, her hair was flying loose, and as it caught the sun it shone and shimmered. A light like the glint of water on dewy grass flashed from under her feet as she danced. They hastened up the last slope, and stood breathless beside her. They bowed, but with a wave of her arm she bade them look round, and they looked out from the hilltop over lands under the morning. It was now as clear and far seen as it had been veiled and misty when they stood upon the knoll in the forest, which could now be seen rising pale and green out of the dark trees in the west. In that direction the land rose in wooded ridges, green, yellow, russet under the sun, beyond which lay hidden the valley of the Brandywine. To the south, over the line of the Withywindle, there was a distant glint like pale glass where the Brandywine River made a great loop in the lowlands and flowed away out of the knowledge of the hobbits. Northward beyond the dwindling downs the land ran away in flats and swellings of grey and green and pale earth colors, until it faded into a featureless and shadowy distance. Eastward the Barrow Downs rose, ridge behind ridge into the morning, and vanished out of eyesight into a guess. It was no more than a guess of blue and a remote white glimmer blending with the hem of the sky, but it spoke to them, out of memory and old tales, of the high and distant mountains. They took a deep draught of the air, and felt that a skip and a few stout strides would bear them wherever they wished. It seemed faint-hearted to go jogging aside over the crumpled skirts of the downs towards the road, when they should be leaping, as lusty as Tom, over the stepping stones of the hills straight towards the mountains. Goldberry spoke to them and recalled their eyes and thoughts. "Speed now, fair guests," she said. "And hold to your purpose. North with the wind in the left eye and a blessing on your footsteps. Make haste while the sun shines." And to Frodo she said, "Farewell, elf friend, it was a merry meeting." But Frodo found no words to answer. He bowed low, and mounted his pony, and followed by his friends jogged slowly down the gentle slope behind the hill. Tom Bombadil's house and the valley, and the forest were lost to view. The air grew warmer between the green walls of hillside and hillside, and the scent of turf rose strong and sweet as they breathed. Turning back, when they reached the bottom of the green hollow, they saw Goldberry, now small and slender like a sunlit flower against the sky. She was standing still watching them, and her hands were stretched out towards them. As they looked she gave a clear call, and lifting up her hand she turned and vanished behind the hill. Their way wound along the floor of the hollow, and round the green feet of a steep hill into another deeper and broader valley, and then over the shoulder of further hills, and down their long limbs, and up their smooth sides again, up onto new hilltops and down into new valleys. There was no tree nor any visible water, it was a country of grass and short springy turf, silent except for the whisper of the air over the edges of the land, and high lonely cries of strange birds. As they journeyed the sun mounted, and grew hot. Each time they climbed a ridge the breeze seemed to have grown less. When they caught a glimpse of the country westward the distant forests seemed to be smoky, as if the fallen rain was steaming up again from leaf and root and mold. A shadow now lay round the edge of sight, a dark haze above which the upper sky was like a blue cap, hot and heavy. About midday they came to a hill whose top was wide and flattened, like a shallow saucer with a green mounded rim. Inside there was no air stirring, and the sky seemed near their heads. They rode across and looked northwards. Then their hearts rose, for it seemed plain that they had come further already than they had expected. Certainly the distances had now all become hazy and deceptive, but there could be no doubt that the downs were coming to an end. A long valley lay below them winding away northwards, until it came to an opening between two steep shoulders. Beyond, there seemed to be no more hills. Due north they faintly glimpsed a long dark line. "That is a line of trees," said Mary.
Okay. It's about time for me to stop. I gotta stop early on Wednesdays and bye.